Sempervive here with you for the next hour talking professional wrestling, which is something we do every single day here on the Sports Byline Broadcasting Network. And however you're joining me today, tune in, iHeart, American Forces Radio, sportsbyline.com, over-the-air affiliates like the Mightier 1090, Sirius XM 156 via podcast. We're streaming on Twitch or on YouTube. Just like to thank you for spending a little bit of time with me today. A ton of stuff to get into as we get into the weekend. Next weekend, we're going to have two big shows all out for, emanating from Chicago and Clash in the Castle. WWE heads on over to Wales, and that is going to affect tonight's SmackDown. Give you some details on what will be taking place during the double taping at Little Caesars in Detroit. Oh, by the way, have you heard about this Eddie Kingston, Sammy Guevara news? Last Friday, I started the show off by saying, there's a lot to get into, and some of it actually takes place inside of a wrestling ring. A lot more of that this time around, but with everything blowing up about the Sammy Guevara, Eddie Kingston, was it a pie face? Was it not a pie face? Eddie's apologized, but Sammy gives his side of the story and probably gives too much of his side of the story, which just seems to have tweaked Eddie a little bit more. We'll get into all of that nonsense as we lead into Rampage tonight. And I'll actually drop a little bit of good news here before we exit this first segment. Bobby Fulton is out of the hospital. The 61-year-old Fulton has had health issues in recent years, including overcoming throat cancer. He was suffering from sepsis and pneumonia, double pneumonia here very recently. He was in the hospital last week in North Carolina, but he is now home. One of the last great tag teams of the territorial age, Fulton, Tommy Rogers, it's the Fantastics between 1984 and 1996. I mean, some great runs, Mid-South, World Class, Jim Crockett Promotions, All Japan Pro Wrestling. Just some really great stuff, and all the best to Bobby Fulton and his family as he continues to fight on with all these health problems. Hell of a team. We'll get into all the news when we get back from break. Wrestling Observer Live.
Hey there, everyone. While we take a quick break, I have another trivia game for you, and this time I'm going to go ahead and quiz you on how well do you remember All Out 2021. Let's play. Question number 1. How many title changes did we see at All Out 2020?
Welcome back to the show. Mike Sempervive here with you. Wrestling Observer Live. The big boss man, Bryan Alvarez, out and about with the family today. Not sure if he's going to be here on Monday either. He's got a lot that's going to be going on next week. Headed to Chicago, obviously, for his Black Label Pro / Game Changer wrestling match alongside Billy Starks against Filthy Tom Lawler and Killer Kelly. So relish the time that you have with Bryan Alvarez next week on this show, whatever days he's going to be on, because come next Friday night, that may be the last you hear of him for a while, because it's very, very tough to talk if somebody has crushed your windpipe with a choke, as Filthy Tom Lawler very well may. Let's also be very realistic about this. So could Killer Kelly. Not to say that Billy Starks won't be holding her at bay, but it may be a long night for that duo there of the youthful-looking Billy Starks and the sort of youthful-looking Bryan Alvarez. But a lot to get into today here. It's Friday. I'll save Sammy and Eddie for right now. Get into a little of the other news that's going on in wrestling right now, including some additions to tonight's lineup for SmackDown from the Little Caesars Arena in Detroit. It was announced this afternoon on social media, because that's how we announce matches, that Drew McIntyre against Sami Zayn will take place on SmackDown. They'll tape 2 shows tonight because, obviously, next Friday the crew will be heading overseas for the Clash at the Castle and Worlds Collide events. Last Friday, really good show. And maybe not overall, but anything that involves Roman Reigns is always great. And it was going to be interesting with all of the changes that were being made and Paul Heyman being F5'd through the table, that he was going to be gone for a while. We knew the Usos wouldn't be there, but I was curious, without Paul Heyman, okay, how will this whole dynamic with Roman work? Because he's added so much to the package by just being Paul Heyman, but really hasn't missed a beat at all here, with now Sami Zayn kind of taking on that role right now. And I thought last week's show was excellent. We'll see how tonight's goes, but it's McIntyre and Zayn tonight. McIntyre obviously going on to face Roman Reigns to Clash at the Castle, and we'll see how... We have Kevin Owens, by the way, still lingering in the background of this story, so how he gets drawn back in and when will be interesting. Will it be after the special network or Peacock event, or will it be before that? We'll have to see. Also tonight, what was rumored for last week is actually going to take place this week, which is Xavier Woods coming back. The Viking Raiders had a funeral for the New Day last week. I'm sorry. I just like the Viking Raiders like they were in ROH and how they kind of started, which were 2 huge guys who were kind of influenced by their culture or whatever it is, and they want to go out there and just kick ass. Like, I would prefer that over the cosplay and the whole Viking experience. I'm not really down with all that sort of stuff, but they Pillmanized Xavier Woods' leg last month. He's on his way back. Fightful Select is also reporting that during the second taping of tonight's show, there's going to be a celebration of Roman Reigns' 2 years as champion, and that JBL will also be making an appearance on the show. So for tonight, not only is there going to be McIntyre and Zayn and the New Day reuniting and returning, but Ricochet faces off against Happy Corbin, and there's going to be that second chance fatal 4-way match in the WWE Women's Tag Team Championship Tournament. Dana Brooke and Tamina against Shotzi and Xia Li against Doudrop and Nikki Ash and Natalya and Sonya Deville. This is going to be the team that replaces Gigi Dolan and JC Jane. And speaking of them, Dave reported in this week's newsletter what many people were speculating after last week's SmackDown, which is Gigi Dolan suffering a concussion. That has now 86 plans to bring them up to the main roster. Short term, at the very least, in the Dolan and Jane versus Natalya and Sonya Deville match, Dolan apparently suffered that concussion, and Natalya really had to hold the match together because Dolan did forget a lot of her spots. There was something that seemed to be amiss in that match anyway, and now we actually know why that's the case. Pretty easy if they were thinking about calling Gigi and JC up to the main roster when they are not ready as a tag team to be on the big shows every single week, week in and week out, but they are a act when you look at it that is certainly ready for the main roster, and I don't think there's much more that Mandy Rose can really achieve in NXT. So losing at Worlds Collide in the three-way against the triple threat against Mako Satomura and B. Priestley, a.k.a. Blair Davenport, it's going to be probably pretty easy to see the whole trio get called up to the roster. Because, again, Gigi and JC aren't ready. But Mandy Rose is kind of overdone down there. And, again, I don't know how much better she can get in the ring. I'm not sure how much more she can really refine her act. So her up on the main roster, I could see it. I could also see her, hopefully at some point, linked back with Sonya Deville. That's the best thing she could do. It's like having Dexter Lumis and Indy Hartwell. I don't know what they're going to do with Dexter on the main roster. As fast as you can get him back down to NXT and to be that kind of character, especially in front of that small crowd at the Performance Center, you know, they're small, but they're rabid. They're there every single week. So that's a story that can continue to play down there. And it's the best use of Indy Hartwell right now because she's certainly not ready to be on the main roster week in and week out, mixing it up with the Bianca Belairs and Asukas and people like that. It's just the speed is too much right now for her. So a couple of other WWE notes. A project involving Vince McMahon, focusing on Vince McMahon, that Netflix looked like it had shelved last month, has been revived. In this week's Wrestling Observer newsletter, Dave reports that Netflix is still working on that McMahon project, with Chris Smith continuing to remain on as director and executive producer. It's unknown what changed since last month's story. That Netflix had pulled the 4-part docuseries from their schedule due to the hush money scandal surrounding McMahon that resulted in his resignation from WWE. Probably what changed since last month's story is we have not had a deluge of negative media stories, even though more has come out about McMahon and some of the NDAs and the money that came up missing for WWE auditors that they've had to go back now and fix. What changed is the fact that the stock, I don't think, went down. There was no negative publicity. There was not a whole lot of high drama and embarrassment or anything like that. So this now just becomes another page in the story, since WWE is involved in this, that they can tell about people coming down on the McMahon family and always trying to get at Vince. It's also unknown how this thing is going to differ from the originally planned series, or if Spotify's Bill Simmons is still involved in the deal at all. It was last July 8th where Denise Salcedo had tweeted that a Netflix source had confirmed to her that the series is no longer being on their spreadsheet, while another one had said, and this is the quote, that blank is out of here. So don't know what happened there. Salcedo had noted that a source indicated the series was deep into post-production and that millions had already been spent. A producer declined to... There you go. There's another reason why. They weren't writing these off on the books like Warner Brothers Discovery is going to be doing with a whole lot of their stuff. A producer then declined to either confirm or deny those reports. So 2 documentaries currently in production on the McMahons. WWE obviously working on one. Ringmaster is currently being written by Abe Reisman. That comes out next March. That is not in conjunction with WWE. And there still is the HBO Real Sports story, which is currently in the works as well. A couple days ago, we got a TMZ moment as McMahon was seen for the first time in public following his resignation, celebrating his 77th birthday at a post-New York City restaurant. A post-New York City? I would assume that would be a posh New York City restaurant. Not sure who wrote this one up. Ian Carey, Brian Rose, Josh Nason, one of you guys. Anyway, Vince was just staggering out, looking like a 77-year-old man out on the town. Oh, man. Whole lot more to get into when we get back from break. Wrestling Observer Live.
1, A0, B1, C2. answer is 1. Out of 4 championship matches, only 1 changed hands, and it was for the AEW World Tag Team Championship, in which the Lucha Brothers defeated the Young Bucks. Question number 2. Who wasn't in the Women's Casino Battle Royale? A. Ty Conti, B. Chris Statlander, C. Jade Cargill, D. Rebel. Out of the following names, the person not in the Casino Battle Royale was Chris Statlander, because she challenged Britt Baker for the AEW Women's World Championship. Question number 3. How many surprise debuts were there? A. 2, B. 3, C. 4, D. 5. The answer is 4. We saw the AEW debuts of Minoru Suzuki, Adam Cole, Ruby Soho, and Bryan Danielson. Question number 4. What was the opening match of the main card? A. Moxley vs. Kojima, B. The 10-man tag, C. Miro vs. Kingston, D. Jericho vs. MJF. The correct answer is Miro versus Eddie Kingston. As always, thank you guys so much for playing. I hope you enjoyed this quick trivia video. And if you haven't already and you want to chat some wrestling with me, feel free to follow me on Twitter and or on Instagram @ Denise Salcedo. Now back to Wrestling Observer Live.
Welcome back to the show. Mike Sempervive here, Wrestling Observer Live. You know we do this show for an hour at a time every single day, but if you want us 24/7, you can find us on Twitter. I am at Sempervive. The timeline for this show is at WONF4W. The broadcaster is at Sports Byline USA. And if you love pro wrestling, at Mid-Atlantic Pod. The shirt's a little bit bright. Didn't plan it out this way, but it pretty much matches the Summer Edition Red Bull here. Summer Edition shirt, Summer Edition Red Bull. ASMR kids, get ready. Crack of the can there. Crack of the can sounds different than a open hand palm thrust to the face. That would be more like that. Shote palm strike, Jushin Liger coming at you. Hurts a lot more than a pie face. Pie face will usually hurt your pride. Really more than anything else, and I'm still not sure if Sammy Guevara was pie-faced or not. Apparently he was not. His face was just touched, but this is what we're dealing with on a Friday, and I don't think Tony Khan was on Busted Open today to be going wild here, but let's just go ahead and get all of this out of the way, even though I certainly know that Eddie Kingston has said that he wants this thing to end, but this was the news of Friday morning. Sammy Guevara has issued a statement detailing his side of the story that we had talked about yesterday on the show about a backstage incident with Eddie Kingston that led to Eddie Kingston being suspended. In a statement issued to Fightful, and I believe Wrestling Observer and PW Insider as well, Sammy said that the incident with Kingston stemmed from verbiage that Guevara used in a promo to set up a match with Kingston at All Out. I'll just go ahead and read Sammy's whole statement here, and I can't do his voice, thank God, as I have bass and probably throat damage. But as a professional, you can communicate things that you don't want to be said, like other people I've been in programs with and have worked with, Matt Hardy, Jericho, and others. And I did communicate of what I didn't want to be said in this angle, and Eddie didn't. But Eddie did not do the same, and Eddie did not mention to me or the coaches or TK or anyone in AEW what he didn't want said. So after Ty's match with Sky Blue and Dante Martin, I cut a promo on Eddie, insulting Eddie and the fans as a heel, which I know the thing everyone loves to do is hate me and Ty, so I'm the perfect person to play this a-hole character for Eddie to ultimately beat at All Out. I see what people say online about Eddie and his appearance, which anyone who legitimately shames Eddie for how he looks can go to hell. It's the same people who shame me for being too small. See, everything sounds like it's going really well right now during this whole thing, this statement that has been issued here, but we'll pick it back up. So Sammy Guevara, the character, I could be the physical person playing that person that Eddie can shut up at All Out. But Eddie did not do the professional thing and communicate to me, which if he did, I never would have said it because it's the last thing I want to do is hurt somebody for real. So after the promo, I get to the back and Eddie is flipping out, yelling, "You can't call me fat. You can't call me fat." Over and over as he's trying to walk down the stairs in Gorilla, making a big scene. People get in between us. Eddie tries to pie face me, and he more like touches my face. It was weird. And everyone backs up. Everyone backs everyone up. It was unfortunate because this promo was taped on a taped show and could have easily been edited, which they ended up doing anyways. I know this Eddie... This is where the shade tree gets planted for me here, okay? I know this isn't Eddie's first time being aggressive and getting out of control backstage. I know he had to do some kind of anger management after this whole thing. This whole thing was very unnecessary, but it is what it is. Live and learn, I guess. On to the next we go. Yesterday, Kingston, after his suspension was found out about and reported on, he talked about it ending, saying that you know the truth. This is what he put out to PW Insider. You know the truth. I wouldn't lie. I was wrong for being unprofessional. That is the blind fact. He did what he did, and the public can judge that, but I know it for a fact. I was wrong. That's where things were when Eddie Kingston signed on to Twitter this morning, and he was not real happy, as one could imagine, because I don't think that certainly wasn't just me who thought that there was a large bit of shade that was flashed down upon there. And I'm going to open up the tweets here because... Eddie not only got into it with and gave his, I shouldn't say got into it with Sammy Guevara, but took some shots back at Sammy, but also Disco Inferno got involved about fans not wanting to see wrestlers quote-unquote fat shamed. Again, I don't know why exactly Disco decided to jump in, but this is what Disco does. And so Eddie Kingston had some responses for him as well here too, as I page back here a little bit, because Eddie's now posting a lot about the Yankees right now and Rampage tonight in his match against Ryan Nemeth. So Wardlow's match against Ryan Nemeth, but God, I had to keep going back on this. How much stuff did this dude tweet here after all this? Apparently a lot, trying to make everybody forget about this. But here it is. Here we go back to it. All right. Last thing I'll say about my suspension, I was wrong. I was in the wrong for touching another man's face. Let it go. Trying to be the bigger person, as they say, but come on, man. There is so much ho-s coming out of people's mouths. And when Disco Inferno decided to jump in and, as I mentioned, talk about wrestlers and fans who need to pull a full stop on this fat-shaming BS, the wrestlers being fat-shamed need to put in the effort to the gym and diet instead of playing victim, do the work and stop embarrassing the industry. This is Disco Inferno. Bill Ding here saying this. Eddie responded to him by saying, "You never did the work and the boys kept you around to laugh at you." And I remember hearing the story where Big Show farted in your face. You ain't a man. A little later on, Eddie was done with all of this before he went on this tweeting rampage here of a bunch of other stuff that's got nothing to do with any of this and saying AEW did 1 million in ratings, right? Let's talk about that. Let's talk about how Mox ripped the head off a snake on live TV. Let's talk about how great my best friend Penta's match was. And we will, Eddie, and we have been doing that. But when you continue to talk and Sammy continues to talk, and this is out there in the ether for the people to pick at and to choose sides over and to speculate about, that's what they're going to talk about. Period. And apparently on BTE, they made a reference to Punk calling out Hangman Adam Page. And Hangman Adam Page was doing a comedy segment with the Dark Order, hyping them up for the Trios tournament. And he kept getting a knock on the door. I believe it was Judge Jeff Jones. But unfortunately, he just waved them off and said he was busy doing other more important things. Big deal? No. Some people looking at it as just poking some fun at it with everything that happened? Maybe. But if there's drama, even though this is not an official AEW show, if you just had your meeting and Punk is still somebody who rubs some people the wrong way, why would you want to do that? Won't it just kind of keep the wound open? Could be wrong. But somebody asked today, what's the big deal with all of this? They could turn it into an angle. It can heat up the angle even more. Exactly right. It could. Or these two could keep this thing on a low boil, because I don't think that even if there are apologies, then there have been, that have been accepted. There have been consequences and reproductions. Hold on, I better get to this Red Bull here. Consequences and repercussions for Eddie Kingston. If that's the case, no. Do you want more of this out here? I don't know. It's they still continue to have an issue here. And if one guy with this thing cooking decides to, they bump into each, whatever happens, and they start getting into it, and one beats the other's ass, that person's probably going to be fired. So who's a winner there? It's not AEW. In fact, both, in theory, could be fired if something like that happened. How does that help AEW? Helps those guys very short term, because I bet you for the next, 2 weeks to a month, if you prorated the money they can make over 4 days, probably doing a double shot on Saturday, they could probably make incredible money. I don't know if it would be close to what they're making on their guarantee when you prorate it, but it doesn't last. It would be 2 to 4 weeks. And AEW is missing two people that fans love to see on their TV. At least one of them. And if one of them happens to be Eddie Kingston, that'll probably be more hullabaloo than anything. And that's going to split up fans. That's going to cause a divide. And that's going to cause a bunch of people to talk about other things than your shows. And that's not good. So that's the problem with this. That's the problem sometimes with these deals that come from personal issues drawing money, because they do, and they can draw money with this. Nothing has changed. Sammy Guevara gave you what was going to happen, possibly, at All Out. Do you still want to see Sammy and Eddie? I do. So it probably didn't hurt anything, but if this continues to linger, if this continues to be something that Sammy wants to poke at, sooner or later, the bear's going to come back out again. We'll be back. Wrestling Observer Live.
Alrighty now, one of my most favorite games to play during these commercial breaks is the word scrambler, word unscrambler, whatever the hell this game is called. Let's unscramble some words. Today's category is AEW wrestlers. Whose name is this? The answer is Angelo Parker. Next one, whose name is this?
Back on the show, Mike Sempervive here with you, Wrestling Observer Live. So I get for making fun of Bryan, being up in the mountains, training, losing the ability to speak, all that oxygen he was losing up there, lost a couple brain cells, stumbled over some words. That's what I get. It's comeuppance for that. Comeuppance for that braid pick that I put up. Yee. Wade Barrett signed a new contract to be remain a part of the NXT commentary team, and that makes me happy because I like the team of Wade Barrett and Vic Joseph. I guess they were not ready for prime time. They were on SmackDown for a while, right? And then we ended up with Pat McAfee and Michael Cole. I think there were some other people before Pat McAfee, but that whole combination down there, including Mackenzie Mitchell, I really like that team, so I'm happy that he's going to be sticking around. He left WWE in 2016, five-time WWE Intercontinental Champion when he was actually wrestling. Hasn't been around since then inside of a wrestling ring, but in December of 2019, under his name, Stu Bennett, he began doing commentary for Billy Corgan's National Wrestling Alliance, taking over the position from Jim Cornette before rejoining the WWE in August of 2020. He did an interview with BT Sport talking about how much he loves doing commentary and how he's not chasing an in-ring return, but would be open to getting back in the ring at some point if opportunity presented itself at the right time. Well, to be honest with you, it's the right time now because they were going over to Wales for Clash at the Castle. But you could also maybe always leave that in your back pocket as well, too. You just don't want to go on for too long while Wade Barrett continues to do commentary. Here's a happy Eddie Kingston note, too. And this should be noted here since all of this drama is taking place and people are jumping on Kingston and people jump on Guevara and having fun with this story because, well, you gave it to everybody to have fun with. But when Eddie was working on August 19th for C4 Wrestling in Ottawa against Stu Grayson, it was at a Canadian Cancer Society benefit and was after what was said to be a blow-away match. And this is coming from the Wrestling Observer newsletter. Kingston said that people are going to regret doubting Grayson because he's that great, and it's a matter of time before people recognize it. He then called out the promoter and told everyone to turn off their cell phones and please do not record this. He then said he wanted his entire pay for the show donated to the Canadian Cancer Society. So he may be a little obstreperous and loud backstage, maybe even destructive and pie-facing, but that was a very nice act that Eddie Kingston did. And when you have all of this drama with somebody, you know, and that's all everything is centering around. It's actually, you know, nice to see some of the things that are going well with them and some of the positive things as well, too. A little bit of balance in the world. Not sure how much balance is going to be tonight on Rampage, but we're going to get backstage footage of CM Punk following his world title loss to Jon Moxley. And I was a little surprised because of how much time they had left in the show last week that we didn't get a shot of maybe trainers working on Punk, like maybe through the door or something like that backstage, or a shot of him and his crew or whoever would be leaving the building being helped into an ambulance or something like that. But looks as though we're going to do that tonight. Tony Khan announced the segment, I believe, on Twitter today or yesterday. So selling that foot injury, we are a week away here from All Out. We have a whole nother Dynamite and Live Rampage to go through before we get there. But still, technically, if we're going to look at an AEW World Championship match as the main event of that show, we're still not sure that we have one. But tonight on the show, we have an ROH World Heavyweight Championship title defense, Claudio Castagnoli against Dustin Rhodes. Look, I don't think this is going to be a great show for ratings, but if you watch these shows for just wrestling and don't care about the ratings, that looks really good. That looks really good on paper there, doesn't it? Have you seen a bad Dustin Rhodes match in the last couple of years? You know, in there was Brody, in there with Cody, in there a couple of times, and every time has looked good. So I expected same way here with Claudio. I mean, physically, it's an interesting matchup. You know, two bigger guys going at it, two veterans. Going to be a good match, I believe. Also on the show, Wardlow defends his TNT championship against Ryan Nemeth. And Powerbomb sympathy. It is just not going to be my day here. I hope to have some sympathy for Ryan Nemeth after he gets Powerbomb symphonied about 29 times in Wardlow's hometown of Cleveland, Ohio. With him not being on Dynamite, again, a little surprised they didn't put him on there doing something, just showing walking backstage or something like that. But because they didn't do that, I would assume all of the heat that got built up for him when he came out probably blew the roof off. So that's probably going to be pretty fun to watch. What is also going to be pretty fun to watch, in all likelihood, is going to be the House of Black against the Dark Order. A lot of people have speculated this week if the Dark Order advances, which could very well be the case, get a Dark Order and, Young Bucks, Kenny Omega thing going on there. It could be very interesting for one Hangman Adam Page. And, what if somebody were to get hurt? Like Alex Reynolds or 10 or John Silver's not getting hurt. John Silver would be in that match. But people wanting to fancy book a little bit. What if Hangman Page takes the place of one of those men? Could be interesting. I don't know. House of Black against the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega. I would rather see that. Just as a match, I would probably rather see that. Sammy Guevara and Ty against Ortiz and Ruby Soho. There Ruby Soho is. It's still hanging with Ortiz. We still have that story there. So also tonight, the CM Punk footage and TBS champion Jade Cargill is going to speak. It will be interesting if she tells Tony Schiavone to cut the S. Apparently, Warner Brothers Discovery would like AEW to cut as many S's as appear on the show. And this had hit my radar on Tuesday, so I don't know how long it's been floating out there in the ether, and I don't know how long that Dave has had this, but word has gotten, this is what he writes in the Wrestling Observer newsletter this week, word has gotten to the promotion from WBD, Warner Brothers Discovery, that they'd like the language toned down. As best we can tell, they have said nothing about the blood. The blood... With Moxley, it's probably at this point. I mean, but it's part of his gimmick at this point. I mean, he just, he walks to the ring, he gets in the ring, he hits his head on the rope, he blades. There's blood everywhere. That's just how it's going to be with Jon Moxley now, I guess. And if they're not complaining about that, you got all those movies that show things exploding and heads exploding and violence and all that sort of stuff that lead into these shows that are on basic cable all the time in prime time. I think the blood thing can be overblown a little bit, but I don't believe that the language is overblown, because when you language, I dare talk to anyone else about language today, but when you are having so many just superfluous curse words for really no reason, you're wasting them. And there's only so much you can do on TV, and there's only so many times you can continue to shoehorn them in. And even with the best, even with the Jade Cargills, even with the MJFs, with any of them, it gets a little much. And it's like, could you not have used anything else there? You're using it as like an exclamation point, but it's, again, there's somebody watching that with their kid going, man, come on, man. And we all hear these words. I know, you're letting them watch wrestling. And I know, I got it. People will point to the Attitude Era of like how many little kids were watching boobs on TV and all the nasty things that we're seeing on TV and whatnot, with DX and blackface or somebody getting attacked or Goldust out there, also at one time in blackface and doing a whole bunch of random stuff. Like, does it make it right? Does it really make it good? One of the things that ended up coming out of all that when they ended up going to Spike was like Barry Diller of USA was just like, okay, all those like mean-spirited, pimply face wrestling fans can now just go get somewhere. And that is a perception still, even though this is more in the mainstream than it ever really has been, there's still sometimes that way to look at this stuff. And that doesn't really do you any good when there's so much nonsense like that, so much nonsense language. So that's probably a good thing for them. Leave the cursing to WWE. Actually, they won't be doing any cursing because the PG era is not over. Last month, it was reported that a deal with for the company to move from TV PG to TV 14 was planned but not finalized. According to a report from PW Insider, that plan is no longer in the works, and WWE is expected to remain TV PG for the foreseeable future. On July 14th, Andrew Zarian posted to Twitter that a memo within USA Network was sent regarding WWE Raw moving to TV 14 beginning on July 18th. Other people also backed up that speculation as well. He would later update his report to say that this would no longer be the case, however. And WWE Raw first moved from TV PG to a TV 14 rating in 1997 to accommodate all of the button pushing and habitual line stepping that they would be doing over the next couple of years, but they decided to go to TV PG for advertising reasons, and that makes a whole lot of sense to do. But I don't think this isn't all about WWE. Some of this is about USA. And USA has been sucking wind. Now, we'll have to see what happens with Warner Brothers Discovery merging. I mean, TBS and TNT have been really strong, and it's not just because of the NBA. It's because of their original programming. It's because a lot of their back catalog. How much is the slashing of original programming going to do damage to TBS and TNT? If one of those channels starts turning into what true TV is for them, and it's a lot of cheaper programming, which in some ways could benefit. We've talked about that when it comes to ad rates, and it comes to getting a new deal. Some of that may actually benefit one show with Dynamite. Would it benefit Rampage? Would it benefit trying to bring on a new show? Maybe not. But that show being basically what WWE Raw is for USA Network, it's possible. Look how much stuff that USA Network has in reality programming, cheaper programming, repeated programming that they put on there and just have a handful of shows, including Raw, that they completely rely on. If they decide to take that tack, Warner Brothers Discovery, who knows how that's going to change things when it comes to USA and how they think. So part of this is USA, because if they can get advertisers to come along and they feel as though they can kind of push things more and be able to keep advertisers, they're going to do so. But that's also going to be, again, this is not just WWE's decision in this. It's got a lot to do with USA Network as well, too. WWE news, when it comes to a big star that they have, Bianca Belair, she signed with WME, the former William Morris Endeavor agency. The report by Variety's Joe Otterson yesterday states the agency will work to build her business across podcasting, acting, marketing, and more. Gives a nice detailed bio, including, this could come right out of Pro Wrestling Illustrated here. It gives the whole lineup, gives a little bit about her college backgrounds, and then a whole run of her wrestling career in WWE. Doesn't even mention her government name either, but Bianca Belair is going to be a multi-platform influencer and powerhouse for a long time to come. Guaranteed. We'll be back. Wrestling Observer Live.
The answer we were looking for, Griff Garrison. And can you unscramble this name? And the answer for this one was Michael Nakazawa. Who can this be? And the answer we were looking for here is Jamie Hayter. Last one, whose name is this? And for this last one, if you guessed Time Mellow, you are correct. These are always a whole lot of fun. Thank you guys so much for playing, and I'll see you on the next video. Back to Wrestling Observer Live.
Back on the show, Mike Sempervive here with you, Wrestling Observer Live. Big boss man Bryan Alvarez will be back with me next week. Don't worry, though. You won't be out of luck with him for very long because he and Dave will be back this weekend doing shows. Dave will be back with Garrett Gonzalez on the website tonight, certainly talking about many of these stories that he wrote about today in the Wrestling Observer newsletter. We'll note that Wednesday night's AEW Dynamite averaged 1.049 million viewers on TBS, up nearly 10% from last week, largest audience total since February 9th. Probably no surprise there since they did advertise the Jon Moxley, or did have the Jon Moxley CM Punk match, as well as Bryan Danielson against Daniel Garcia. So not really any big surprise there. Up in every single demo. John Pollock from Post Wrestling noted that up in Canada, Dynamite averaged 82,000 viewers. Big numbers up significantly in their key demo too. 25 to 54 was up, but still down about fifth of the viewers from what they averaged in July. So, you know, some of the slumping that they've had here, especially when it comes to Rampage, that's also been the same case up in Canada. And even though they don't really, you know, Toronto's going to be in the playoffs, it definitely looks like. But hockey breathing down AEW's throat is on its way here on TBS, and it's just going to be have a real effect in Canada, too, when it comes to their shows on RDS, which are just getting on. We talked about last week, a new live French showing of their shows, but also up there as well, too, on the English language. It's just going to be tough. Football, you know, it's really going to hurt everybody here, but hockey in Canada is obviously going to do some damage, too. Also should be noted that apparently there are nearly 6,000 tickets, 5,700 tickets out for Dynamite, a healthy number for a 3-show week. Rampage is about at 40, almost 5,000 right now. Still 850 combo tickets left for all 3 nights. They have also added a deal in AEW where if you buy a ticket for both Dynamite and Rampage, it'll be $30. So things are looking good for AEW as far as ticket sales go. They have the 3 hottest secondary markets in the next few months, which is a turnaround for them, Dave writes in the newsletter, as tickets were down to 10 and 6 on the secondary market, and that's that. So do we have a lot more time here? Producer Daniel, did I drop? What has happened here? There is no outro music, and I'm looking at the clock, and we're way over. So I guess that's it. Mike Sempervive, Wrestling Observer Live.